Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Forasteros, and this is the Beacon Bit. This Sunday that we're gathering for our beacons is the 11th day of Christmas, so I hope you're still celebrating. And today we're going to be talking about John 1 through 18, which is admittedly a little bit of a strange Christmas text since it's not really about the wise men or the shepherds or any of that, but I think you'll love it. One of the proclamations we make at Christmas time is that Jesus is Immanuel, which means God with us. It's one of the names or the titles that's bestowed upon him. And I think that's really an interesting claim because most of us do not experience God as with us. I think most of us, when we think of God, experience God as far off or remote. God's up there in heaven looking down on us. But the Christmas story insists that Jesus is God with us, that he is among us, that he became one of us and equal to us. And this is a profound challenge, but it's one that this text here in John goes to great pains to illustrate in an artful way that I think we miss because most of us are not experts in Hebrew poetry. Can that really be held against us, right, 2,000 years later? But if you know those things, it's actually really cool. Most of us are used to the idea of gods being up there. I mean, going all the way back to the gods in the ancient world, they were on mountains, right? Whether it was Mount Sinai, where Moses encountered Yahweh and received the Ten Commandments, or whether that's Mount Olympus with the Greek gods or any of those, right? Like the gods were up there. And that's because we've always had this thing in human cultures where in order to highlight someone's authority, we try to make them look bigger than the rest of us. So maybe we give our leaders big hats or something like that. We give them, the big shoulder pad dress uniforms or whatever. Maybe we put people up on pedestals or behind podia so they can literally look down at the rest of us. Bosses will often have the big chairs behind the big desks. So they make it clear that they are the ones in charge because they have this big, imposing, almost like a throne, like a king, right? And so what John does in this opening prologue to his gospel is really fascinating because he highlights not that Jesus is above us, but actually that Jesus came down to us. And it's done in this way that, again, I think most of us miss, but it is a common poetic device that is used in a lot of ancient poetry called a chiasm. I'm going to show it to you here on this slide. So a chiasm is think of it like a big literary arrow. And you can find it in a passage when you notice that the first line and the last line sort of echo each other or have a same theme. And then the second line and the second to last line will have a similar theme, and the third line and the third to last line, and so on. So the whole thing is almost making like this big arrow that's pointing at something in the middle of the text, which will often, as you can imagine, be the important or the highlighted moment. So scholars have long recognized that the entirety of John 1 through 18 is a big chiasm. It opens with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, talking about Jesus as God. And then at the end, it talks about the Son being close to the Father, right? And we kind of go through these. You have these two pieces about John the Baptist in the middle of it that, again, it doesn't make sense why they're broken up until you understand that they're meant to match each other in the parallel of the chiasm. And the central point in the middle of it all is that the Word became flesh so that we could all become children of God. So it's Jesus becoming one of us, right? Now, the other thing that's interesting is that there is geographical movement in this chiasm. You can see that the arrow is not pointing up, it's not pointing left, it's not pointing right, it's pointing down because it begins with the Word with God and it ends with the Word or the Son close to the heart of God. But that point in the middle is the Word becoming flesh and making his dwelling among us. The actual Greek there is he set up his tent among us, right? He went camping with us, as I think the message might say. Or no, it says it moved into our neighborhood. But you could say he went camping with us, right? And there's a whole bunch of other cool theological stuff there. We don't even have time to unpack. But here is this moment, right? We're talking about Jesus being up in heaven with the Father and then coming down to us to become flesh like one of us. Okay, so it's this inversion movement. It's going from up to going down. And that gets even more provocative when you look at the end of the passage and you see that it's talking about Moses being close to God, because Moses got close to God. How? By going up a mountain. So we have like not a mountain in this chiasm, but a valley. We have this inversion of the classic holy person journey where a holy person goes up the mountain to meet with the gods and then comes back down to bring down the special revelation. That's why Moses was such a big deal. And so instead, in this, what we have instead of the holy person going up the mountain and coming back down is we have Jesus coming down from heaven to us, not to where the holy people are, but where all of us are, just on the ground in the midst of our, dirt and muck and normal lives or whatever. What gets even more interesting is that it says no one has ever seen the Father. Well, it's interesting that John says that right after bringing up Moses, because Moses is famous for having spoken with God, specifically as it says in Exodus, as one person talks to another face to face. So Moses did see God in that instance. In fact, there's another famous story where Moses asks to see God's face, and God's like, my face is too holy, it'll kill you. You can see my butt. And so then he literally walks past Moses, puts his hand over Moses so Moses can't see his face, and then Moses gets to see his quote unquote glory, which was a euphemism in Hebrew for butt. Genuinely, that's true, right? There's something theological there about humans are not holy enough to see God's face, where maybe the best of us might be holy enough to see God's butt, right? So that's a whole other conversation, right? But this is all important. John expects us to know all of these things when he says no one has ever seen the Father except for the Son, because then when we see Jesus, what we are seeing is God. It's God coming down off of the mountain. It's the God who is so holy that we are barely holy enough to see his backside coming down and taking on flesh and being among all of us. So there's no longer this separation between the holy and the unholy, between the clean and the unclean. God has taken all of that away by descending from his throne on high and getting into the muck and the ordinary everything with all of us. That is the Christmas story. When we say God is Immanuel, God with us, this is what we mean, right? That Jesus took on the messiness of birth and the messiness of human life, taking on a body that leaks and evacuates waste and all the gross stuff that our bodies do. God became that to become one of us, to become with us. And that is good news, because now we have a God who knows us intimately and who can be known. We don't have to think of God as someone who's distant and far away. We can think of God as someone who is close to us, someone that we can speak to face, not a boss behind a desk or a preacher up on a pulpit or something like that, but a friend who sits next to us and who knows us. That has some profound implications for everything we've talked about through this Christmas season and for what we're going to be talking about as we move towards Epiphany next week in our live kickoff. But for now, I want to talk about those in our beacons. I'm so excited to be there with you. I hope you're still enjoying the Christmas season, and grace and peace be with you.